the legislative
I'm
director.
Spencer Overton. I'm the president of the Joint Center for Political and Economic Studies. We're a think tank set up in 1970 to support my political officials. Today, we're focused on the future of work. We all know that AI and Internet of Things and smart cities and 5G and a variety of other factors are changing the place. Last year, we did a paper, 5G Smart Cities and Communities of Color. We found that for every 100,000 residents of a county or a city, telecom providers could spend about $28 million to install 5G infrastructure. That cities and counties could see a GDP boost of 125 million and 650 new jobs. We also found that 74% of Latino males and 73% of African American males said that they would be excited to accept jobs installing 5G and smart cities infrastructure. Another factor, though, here is that these technologies could also eliminate jobs. When we talk about sensors in sanitation bins and the fact that sanitation workers will have to go and pick the trash up less often, that may mean some jobs. When we talk about parking lot attendants being displaced by parking lot systems, that could have an impact. We have another study that found that 31% of Latinos, 27% of African Americans, 24% of whites, and 20% of Asian Americans are concentrated in just 30 jobs at high risk to automation. So these are your bus drivers, people in retail sales, some other positions here. So how do we make this transition so that all can participate in the new economy? And also, employers need employees who have real skills, right? And so how do we ensure that skills are distributed throughout society so that employers have the workforce that they want and need? We'll hear a lot more about this from a great panel that we've got assembled today. We've got Mike Knapp, who is the CEO and co-founder of SkillSmart. We've got Anna Randazzo, who's the executive director of the Center for Energy Workforce Development. We've also got filling in here Chris Hoffmansberger, who's the executive director of software.org, and Brian Haney. We've got Brian, who's ensuring that it's a truly interactive panel here, who is a principal at Century Engineering. So why don't we start here by letting you all just kind of introduce yourselves and tell the group here in the room a bit about your background and how your background fits into the smart cities ecosystem. Mike, why don't we begin?
Sure. Well, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to be with you. So we at SkillSmart, Jason Green, my co-founder, and I, both come at this from both a policy perspective and a practical perspective. So I actually started my career on the Hill a long time ago, working for Senator Domenici for 5 years. Went out and did a lot of other things, got elected as a county council member in Montgomery County, and then stepped away from that. As I stepped away, I was the chair of Montgomery College and also the University of Shady Grove. Jason was associate counsel at the White House, and we were both seeing the same things. We were coming out of the recession. Theoretically, you should have lots of people getting hired. You should have lots of companies being very excited about people coming back into the workforce. And what we saw was companies frustrated because the people who were coming into the workforce didn't have the skills they needed to be successful. You had job seekers feeling as though they didn't have the capacity to do what they needed to in the jobs that were there. And so we said, well, this looks like an opportunity. And so we stepped back and said, how do we take technology and learn how to better align employers, job seekers, and education providers? And what would be the mechanism by which we would do that? And so we looked at a lot of different mechanisms. We identified skills as the backbone to all of that. That employers are not particularly great at articulating what they're looking for job seekers to do, or for employees to do. And so as a result, use typically outdated job descriptions that aren't particularly clear as to what people are looking for. Job seekers generally don't know, as long as I've got a resume uploaded and the job looks interesting and I hit submit, then I do, and then they're surprised when they don't get feedback. And education resources oftentimes do what they do, kind of in the whole train or educate and pray model. We've got our curriculum, we've got our programs, and so come take them, and if you're smart enough, you should be able to get what you need and ultimately be successful. We said that doesn't work very well. So skills, we can break down job descriptions and individual skill sets. It allows employers to better understand what they're looking for. Job seekers can then begin to correlate their experiences back to those individual skills, whether they're job experiences, work experiences, life experiences, educational activities, and we can begin to show them how closely they match. And when they don't, we now have clarity because we take the skills-based approach. We can begin to align educational resources specifically back to those individual skills that job seekers don't have. And rather than go take a 2-year associate's degree in IT, you may not need that. You may need 3 courses. Let's align those 3 courses or those 3 sets of activities or experiential learning opportunities back to those individual skills. Now it's much more manageable, much more accessible for that individual job seeker to take the next step to get into the workplace and then begin to move their way through. And with that clarity, it's also clear as to what the next steps are from that. And so that's kind of where we took our skill and executive experience, working with the private sector, being able to take that and create a model that allows us to now drop that down in just about any city. We're working in 5 different cities now in the country, usually working with a large employer first because it now gives us a nice anchor and then branching out from there. But beginning to really work with communities to identify what are those most in-demand jobs, what are the skills that our job seekers now have, and begin to then align our education resources to make sure that we're getting the employers the skilled workforce that they need. We can begin to do that in real time. So we can take an employer that's looking to hire 18 months from now and doing a large-scale hiring, and we can break down those things and give people clear pathways in. Or we can do it to industries that are currently being challenged, like manufacturing, and begin to show people how those pieces work. And so we're doing that and deploying, and it gives you a great opportunity to be able to then realign what you're spending your dollars on and making sure that you can get outcomes.
Hi, I'm Ann Madessa. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Energy Workforce Development. We were formed back in 2006. We're a national nonprofit. And we came together when the industry was facing an aging workforce issue. We had about half of our workforce was set to retire in the next 5 years. We had a huge construction boom, and the industry came together to figure out how can we work better together than we can separately. And one of the things that the electric and natural gas utility industry has going for it is we're used to working together. Anybody who's ever been in a storm knows that you can look out and see trucks and hats that might have many different logos on it. So we came together with that kind of motivation. We formed the Center, CEWD as we call it, as a nonprofit, and we now represent the major trade associations, Edison Electric Institute, American Gas Association, the National Rural Electric Cooperative Association, Nuclear Energy Institute, the American Public Power Association, and most recently, the Distribution Contractors Association. Our members are electric and natural gas utilities and contractors all across the country. Through our membership, we represent about 75% of all of the utility employees in the country. So we also partner with labor. IBEW and UWA are part of our board and executive council, and we have partnerships with about 300 schools, high schools, technical schools, community colleges, and universities across the country. So what we do is look at what are the most critical jobs, what are the skills that you need for that, and then what's the best way to educate as we go through it. We have national brands like Get Into Energy, that's our national career awareness brand, Troops to Energy Jobs, where we focus on bringing in the military, and we have a really big focus on diversity and inclusion to make sure that these jobs go to everybody because they are great jobs.
I am Brian Haney. I am principal at Century Engineering and a professional land surveyor licensed in Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. I've been surveying for about 30 years, so I'm coming from the private sector, and I'm also a member of the National Society of Professional Surveyors and the Maryland Society of Surveyors, and I am the chair of the Workforce Committee for the State Board of Directors and the chairman of the Baltimore chapter of the American Society of Surveyors. I got into this because there's a need for younger people to come into our profession. We're also facing an aged workforce in the surveying industry throughout the country, and we need to bring younger people in, so that's what we started doing. We started a Future Surveyors program in Baltimore City, working with the Mayor's Office of Employment Development. We went out and we started talking to high school students about the survey and a career, and getting them interested. We created an internship program. Was fairly successful last year, was our first year, and we're hoping to double it this year and keep going from there.
Chris?
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I'm Chris Hoffman. I'm with software.org, which is the sister research organization of BSA, the Software Alliance, which is the global voice of the software industry. Companies like Microsoft, Siemens, Autodesk, the real, almost the infrastructure of the smart cities effort. So for the past 8 or so years, I've been working on kind of creating the proper policy environment for these opportunities in the future. And as that time has gone on, one thing that we have always been talking about is the need for more workers. That in the software industry has been focused internally a lot on the need for more STEM educated workers, more STEM software developers. And we are very focused on that because that is the workforce of the future. As smart cities really take off, we realize we need a workforce for today as well. And that means not just educating kids, that means training workers who are in other industries who want to come over into these great jobs, and retraining the people who are in them now. So we have redirected a lot of our work to focus on this issue of how do we create workforce for today as well as tomorrow. Software.org itself has kind of a two-pronged mission. One is to explain new technologies, and the other is to really kind of expand the understanding of the software industry. People hear names like Apple, IBM, Microsoft, and they think Silicon Valley, maybe Silicon Slopes, Silicon something, but they don't necessarily understand that software is really increasingly driving every sector of the economy and every region of the country, and we need a software trained workforce everywhere to make these smart city projects work and to make those projects work for the communities where they are kind of helping lift them up.
Okay, thanks, Jason. So here's what I want to do. I want to just take 2 minutes, right, and just go around, name and affiliation. So here's the mic. Spencer, Overton,
Do you want to pass this mic to you? I've been told we need to use the mic here, right? Not drop the mic, but use the mic. So energy sector is expected to continue to spend here a lot of money, trillions of dollars in terms of infrastructure, right? With an aging workforce, what workforce opportunities do you see developing within the industry? And also in terms of your member companies, what are kind of some of the best practices that you all have been using to ensure that there's a good pipeline of talent?
Thank you. So, yes, we are investing a lot in infrastructure, and we, as I mentioned, we started with this idea of how can we bring young people in to replace some of the people in the aging workforce. But back in 2008, 2009, y'all remember that we went through a recession. During that time, things changed. They changed for the industry, and they changed for education. So we started looking then at not just an issue of how do we replace people that are leaving, but how do we change jobs, and how do we bring people in with skills that we had never expected before. So our issue moved fairly quickly from an aging workforce to one with a skills gap. As we began looking at not just the people that were coming in and what kind of skills they brought, but how our jobs are changing. Because what we found is that as a simple example, a line worker, for example, we all know what they do. They're on the trucks, they keep the lines up, they keep the power on. We were looking at that point when we started at a very different system of how we use those trucks and how we use the line workers. Now what we're looking at are line workers who have computers in their trucks. They do a lot of this stuff automatically, it's centralized, they're not going out to look at where a particular transformer may have failed, rather they are going out with that information in hand and it's all being scheduled for them. So what that does is mean, as you said, it's about not just bringing in new people, but retraining the ones that we have. So we look at a handful of jobs that we consider to be critical. And those are line workers, plant and field operators, skilled technicians for all types of generation and transmission distribution, and engineers. They make up about 44% of our total workforce. So what we began looking at is what are the skills that they need now, how are those jobs changing for the future, and what's the best way to educate them. It's different for different jobs. For example, for some of the technician positions, like an instrument control or relay technician, we're talking about an associate degree. So we have partnered with community colleges. We have great examples through our National Energy Education Network of what those programs look like. But the issue that we are starting to really face is that we don't know what the future brings. So if you work with a community college, it can take, even though they are much more nimble than universities, it can take a year, 2 years to get a change into curriculum or to get a new program in. So what we're looking at is how do we break up education so that we can train for skills that we know are going to be durable, things like, we call them employability skills, things like working as part of a team, the ability to learn, critical thinking, problem solving. Add to that knowledge about the industry. What's the difference between transmission and distribution? How do you look at the different types of generation? And then what are the specific skills for a job so that we can add to a base education as changes come into place. We call them snap-on credentials so that you can take a short-term boot camp or a course and be able to add it to what somebody knows. Those are things you can do pretty quickly. But if you try to go in and create a new associate degree program, you have missed the opportunity and we are lagging behind where we need to be. So we're looking at jobs individually to see the best way to educate. Some of them are apprenticeships within the companies like Con Ed and others. But depending on what the job is, you have to start with the job, understand the skills now, and then be able to forecast what's it going to look like in a year or two.
Brian, how about surveyors? What's new in terms of recruiting and preparing surveyors?
Well, what's new is that we have an aging workforce. It's not really new. It piggybacks on what you just said, that the average age of a surveyor licensed in the United States is 58. And there are more surveyors that leave the profession than new people coming into the profession every year. So the National Society recognized that we have to get on board with our workforce development and get out there and get younger people in and train others to come into our profession, because it's a viable career option that a lot of people don't know about. We have our hands into a lot of different things. We work very closely with utility companies. We work with contractors. We work with developers, real estate agents. We work with engineers intimately. So we're all over the place. We have our hands into things like the law, in history, zoning, all kinds of stuff. We're there most of the time. Before you see contractors out on the site and big equipment, surveyors have already been there. And we'll be there throughout that project, and then we'll be there at the end.
How about these big changes like drones and other things?
Yes, that's something that, being around for a long time and knowing the surveyors that I do, and with our aging workforce, not everyone takes to new technology like younger people do. So it's to our advantage to get younger people in to work with new technology. We're not compass and chain surveyors anymore on horseback. We're not the surveyors of Lincoln and Washington anymore and Jefferson. We're working with laser scanners and mobile LiDAR, and we're mapping with unmanned aircraft now. So we're doing all of that stuff and having people who are more familiar with technology and more comfortable with technology is a benefit to our profession.
Mike, skills, we all talk about these skills that are in demand. So what are the big skills that are most attractive to employees?
I think it's important to recognize that it changes from place to place. And so one of the things that we looked at was a lot of times you'll see kind of a theoretical position. Here are the array of skills that everyone should have. And the challenge is, if you're an employer, you're not hiring a theoretical person, you're hiring a person to do this particular job. And so you need them to do the 12 things you need them to do. And so one of the things that we try to do with our system is to really capture the skills that an employer is looking for today, but have that be very dynamic so that when that changes, you can update that system momentarily. And so it's a very dynamic, fluid process, so that now, as it's changing within a community, you can begin to see that and start to pivot and be able to address. A lot of the skills are work as part of a team, be able to communicate effectively. Interestingly, one of the biggest things that most employers talk about today is showing up on time and keep showing up. Sounds like a simple thing, but you'd be amazed as many different community you're in, people aren't doing it. And so you have those things that are kind of transferable across. One of the things that's also interesting is until you can work with employers to start to break their job descriptions down into individual skill sets, they don't often know how their skills translate. And so we work with a couple of very large employers where we've taken 200 plus jobs, broken them down and said, do you realize these 8 skills encompass 60% of the jobs that you have? They have no idea. And so that's one of the important things is to move beyond the job description, those individual building blocks, because now you have greater clarity about what it is you're trying to do in the first place.
So on a macro level in jurisdiction, is the best repository for that kind of BLS data? Is it LinkedIn? Is it like, where is there even one place? Is it just all over the place?
Oftentimes it's no place because people don't think about skills. We oftentimes end up using proxies to say, well, I need an employee that has a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, and 3 years of experience. And then you're frustrated when that person comes in and they can't do what you needed them to do because you didn't really articulate what you were looking for. And so that's what we work with employers to do, which is really important, is to say, what do you need that employee to do that you think a 4-year degree and 3 years of experience enables them to occur? And so that's a really important piece, is to break that back down and to get back to proxies, especially when you're looking to try and provide inroads for an array of people in the community. It's hard enough to get people who are employable in the first place, and now when you start coming up with kind of false proxies, now you take that workforce and make it even smaller. And so really break down those skills and say, but it doesn't exist because most people aren't even talking about the concept of skills.
And how do we prepare when things are changing so much and so quickly, so rapidly?
So I totally agree. You have to start with the jobs, and you have to look at those individual jobs and come up with what's the common denominator, first of all. And you can bring in people that have that common denominator. But what we have found is that if you depend on BLS or ONET or whatever, for our particular jobs, all of those jobs that I talked about get lumped into one big category, and it's very generic. So what that means is that companies have to get involved. We actually have what we call State Energy Workforce Consortium. They are like mini CEWDs at the state level where utilities, their partner educators, government agencies, whoever, get involved and look at what's the need in this particular state, because what's happening in Louisiana might be different than what's needed in California, and begin to tear apart those jobs and agree amongst themselves, here are the critical skills, here's what we need. So when you're thinking about what the future is, if you can get people in who have that solid foundational knowledge and have the ability to learn, then you can create these snippets, bits and bytes of training that you can use for people who are already employed. Maybe they're in a job and you see that changing, so you can add that to what they know. Or you can add it to a curriculum at a technical school or community college or wherever they're getting their education. And what it means is that you have to change the process of education. One of the difficulties that we've had is if you go into a community college, then people enroll and they know they need to take the, 60 credit hours worth. And they'll look for, oh, I need this course, that one is available, I'll take that. I'll take this one, and then, oh, that one is closed. So I'll take this course up here, then I'll come back in and add that. So there's not a foundation. And you don't really know until people have graduated that they've taken what they needed. Instead, if we could restructure the way that we educate so that we had enough courses, enough classes open for those foundations, then you can start to build on it. But what it means is that companies have to be involved because they are the keepers of that knowledge. They can look at not just how the job is changing, but when it's changing and the pace. And for example, smart meters, something that has really changed our industry. But if you look at what's happened over the last 4 or 5 years in terms of implementation of smart meters, depending on where you go, where you are, whether you're regulated or not, what kind of investment you're going to make, it's happened at different places at different times. So we're not in an industry where we can say 2 years from now, all of this is going to happen across the country.
Right.
And that's why we share. We get together through the state consortia, we meet regionally, and we can learn from somebody who's already been through it. Here's what we saw when we were first starting out, and we can add to that as other companies have gone through it. So start with the job, understand what's required now, structure education to get that, and then add to it as you see that future unfolding.
Chris, the Software Alliance recently released a report called It's Time to Prepare the Workforce of the Futures. And we can kind of lift up, kind of some of the central insights of that.
Absolutely. So I will take a step back just real quickly and say BSA is the lobbying arm and I'm the educational arm, so I can speak to some of the educational points, but I won't be making any pitches for any specific legislation. I mentioned that a lot of our work came from the sense in the computer industry, the knowledge in the computer industry, that we were severely understaffed. We looked a few years ago, there were more than 500,000 open computer jobs, and schools were only turning out about 50,000 computer science graduates each year. A huge shortage. BLS came up a minute ago. They released a survey every couple of years, kind of forecasting jobs in the future. Our jobs are some of the fastest growing over the next 10 years. And we looked at some of the skills that were involved there, some of the things that are needed. Cybersecurity is one of them. Cybersecurity is going to be key to every industry that automates. They're going to want to protect the data. They're going to need people who can do that. Just last year, I think there were about 1 million open cybersecurity jobs, and only 3/4 of those could be filled by the people who had them. So our companies are looking around and trying very actively to get involved, not only to fill their jobs, but the jobs in other sectors across the economy. Microsoft and IBM are targeting school programs in communities to target the jobs that are nearby. IBM's P-Tech program, there are 2 P-Tech schools in Baltimore that turn out kids. It's a 5 or 6 year program. They can come straight through high school and graduate with an associate's degree that puts them into a field that is married up to the local needs. So in Baltimore, there is a medical tech P-Tech program, and there is also a cybersecurity tech program. So what we are doing as well as companies is trying to roll out training programs that help the industries that we serve fill their jobs. Salesforce is a good example. Salesforce has a self-directed program where you can go and teach yourself online the skills that you need to be in sales, a Salesforce database administrator, and there are a ton of Salesforce jobs out there. IBM has a series of certification programs that can help you get cybersecurity skills that can get you at least on the precipice for some of these jobs, or get the door open rather than sending you back into a 2-year program or an associate's degree program that might not be specific to what you need.
So we see these listings, for example, software applications, but then we also see cybersecurity, right?
how closely are the skills just completely different? Is there any relation in terms of the skills? And in terms of these skills, how geographically kind of based and or industry based are they versus, just kind of broader and more national in terms of these particular skills?
Yeah, it is all over the place. So I think people need everything from your hardcore software coder to your Salesforce administrator who's going to come into your company and help you accomplish the missions of your company, to the help desk guy who's going to walk you through your computer problems. All of those require very different educational backgrounds and skill sets, and the need for those is very different from market to market. But increasingly, we're seeing the need for all of them all across the country. Ag tech is one thing. People do not necessarily think of software and agriculture, but software jobs grew fastest in the last 2 years in Kansas and Indiana. And part of that is the growth of agricultural technology. We need people, farmers increasingly drive huge computer-powered tractors. They're not just out there. You mentioned the surveyors of Washington's era and Jefferson's era. These aren't the citizen planters either. They're high-powered tractor drivers.
Spencer, I just wanted to add to your question in terms of geographic location for cybersecurity. There's a website called cyberseek.org. CompTIA partnered with Burning Glass and with NIST to put that together. And it's a heat map, essentially, of supply and demand of cybersecurity workers across the country. So you're correct, there's about 250,000 cyber jobs that remain open, and they cover the gamut in terms of what skills are needed. So it could be what IBM often refers to as the new collar economy, somebody who does not necessarily require, a four-year college degree, and could be doing a help desk or networking jobs that are related to cybersecurity, all the way up to the most detailed sort of cyber ninja type jobs. So that map will actually give you all 50 states plus some MSAs. The other thing, while I have the mic, is just to share with you a few other things. We just released Cyber States, which is our annual 50-state report. So there's about 11 million technology jobs that could be in the tech sector or across various sectors, like a drone operator, et cetera. And again, you can look at every state and about 40 different MSAs to see what type of jobs are leading in the tech sector and how they relate back to other industries, obviously. The other thing is, as we start to think about smart cities, there are about 200,000 job postings that are in emerging tech categories. So we have started to identify those categories. So there's 2.8 million job postings overall in the tech sector. 200,000 of them are in emerging technology spheres. And you can start to sort of draw a map between cities and states that may well have smart approaches to planning, et cetera, to what's going on with some of the employment and emerging tech conversations. So I just wanted to put that out there. I don't want to
That's good. So
Yeah.
let's use that just to kind of drill down on some of the jobs in terms of kind of the smart cities ecosystem. Like, what are some of the emerging skills and some emerging jobs? I think you talked about a few, but if we could just kind of drill down on that'd be great.
I mean, I think to your earlier question, if you start looking at this from a smart cities approach, one of the things we've got to kind of begin to reorient is move away from kind of the traditional job board, job listing, because that's where you start to get that information originally. And so if you're taking each industry and saying, well, you're going to have to engage someplace along the way and put information someplace, that's hard, especially if I'm a smaller company. But if I'm a company, I'm going to post a job. And so we can reorient that initial job description to take a more skills-based approach. Well, now I can start to see what the skills are and how they begin to line up. And so what's a penetration tester versus an ethical hacker versus somebody who's working on the help desk, and how do I begin to say, gee, I could actually start to work at the help desk because the 6 foundational skills for being a penetration tester start by working at a help desk, and then I can start to take more certificates from a CompTIA and work my way up to up that pathway. And so the challenge really is to be able to start to capture that information on the front end, because we tend to look at it on the back end. So we look at ONAP, we look at BLS data, which is all looking retrospectively.
Right.
And so by the time you try to figure out, the notion of trying to kind of skate to where the puck is gonna be, not where it is, we don't have a lot of tools in place right now to skate to where the puck's gonna be. And so we've got to start to reorient that. That's kind of how we as SkillSmart came around.
So how do we communicate that to folks and get that information out there? I mean, we all know what the parking lot attendant is who loses their job, or we all know what a sanitation worker is, right? But in terms of the jobs that you just mentioned, I don't think that most folks know about them.
No,
or
they
think
don't.
about them.
It's a fundamental shift in how we think about this ecosystem. You've got to start with the employer and have them start to break those skills down. So now as a job seeker, I can look at that. So when I go to the community college, maybe I don't need an associate's degree. Maybe I don't need my 2-year degree. Maybe I need these 6 skills, or I need the CompTIA certificate, which now gets me the 5 skills to get hired, which now gets me the additional experience I need to ultimately get the next job in cybersecurity. And so what we're trying to do is to work within those large employers and those communities to start to say, okay, what's the demand today? What jobs are you looking for? What are those skills? But as you start to be able to post that next job, you can begin to look in real time and say, wait a minute, those 3 skills are different than the last time you posted this position. Because until you start to get that reflexive and start to see that, you're always going to be skating where the puck is, not where it's going to be. And that's the hard part. And so it's a total mind shift to how we do this. We oftentimes we go through school, we get our training, and then we look around and go, I think I'd like to be X. Well, it's too late. You've already spent all your time, you've already done the education. You should be getting that information 6th, 7th, 8th grade, the end of high school, the beginning of, and that's where we've got to start getting that focus differently. Chris?
I'll jump in real quickly. We spent a lot of time on the Hill talking about the future of work, and I would like to think, in my case, the future of work arrived a long time ago. I graduated from college, I went into journalism. The journalism industry changed fundamentally because of the internet. I went into law school. While I was in law school, technology fundamentally changed how law firms work. In both cases, my job changed so dramatically because of technology that I found myself, I have the skills and I could have changed with it, but I really found myself wanting to do something different, wanting to take the skills that I'd learned in one place and leapfrog and go in another. I think anybody who's in a job today needs to be thinking about how that job will change, because it will change. Siemens is one. You asked for specific examples. Siemens is going into every city, and they're going into lots of cities, and they're looking at the power grid. They are looking at the water system. They are looking at traffic infrastructure. Everybody works in those spaces, from the guy in the water plant to the person changing the bulbs in the streetlights. All those jobs are going to change. And at the same time, the good news is a lot of times those jobs change in a way that helps people do things differently. We were in Chicago recently and talking to the folks in the water plant, where the sensors are now doing a lot of the communicating of problems in the water plant. So the people at the desk, and these aren't the cleanest jobs, the people at the desk in the monitoring station, they didn't have to pull on a uniform, trudge down into the plant, find out what was the matter, what was going on. The sensor was telling them directly. That frees that person up to focus more on fixing the problems. It also makes those jobs, thankfully, a little more accessible to a lot of people with disabilities, people who couldn't necessarily get down into the water plant. At the same time, all of these sensors are producing a ton of data. We're going to create a ton of data jobs. We need more data scientists. We need people who can think not just in terms of data, but how data applies to specific industries, and the information that is being thrown off by the power lines, being thrown off by surveying equipment.
Yeah, I think that we really have to think, we're kind of back to the skills piece and the individual chunks. It's not about just new jobs or jobs that are being posted or jobs that are in a very technical area. Every single job we have is changing. We don't have a single job in our industry that will not be changed because of technology. And certainly when you think about smart cities, every single job that's out there is going to be changed. So you have to start to break it apart and see which pieces and when. And I'll go back to cyber as an example. If you look out, we have an online job posting. and we scrape all of our member company jobs. If you go out there and you plug in cyber to see how many jobs, cyber jobs we have, it's a handful. But what we know is that every single employee has to understand cyber at some level. So it's not just about IT. For us, it's about physical security and operations technology and the way that we're working. So everybody needs something. Some people need more. And then at some point, we have those 100 cyber jobs that are out there for real experts. But we've been kind of monitoring how many of these job descriptions start to mention cyber. And they're certainly in the IT area, but there are others as well that are popping up. So I think what you have to consider is not just which jobs are going to be impacted, but assume every job will be impacted. The question is how.
May I? Two things. So, no, I can talk really loud. That's not a problem. So we had the Industrial Revolution, heavy infrastructure, everything got built. There's a big jump towards technology. How are we going to be addressing the education side? Okay, because we might be planning for tech jobs, in cyber and others, but we're going to have to talk about the middle school. I mean, and before then, I mean, India and China, I've lived in both countries, are investing a lot in that, in just that type. How do we step back and say we really need to figure out policy that really brings us up? Because it's band-aids right now, right? So get back to the core.
I'll jump in since I have a mic and pass it. What we have found is we kind of segment, look at different demographics to figure out how we're going to bring them in. And girls are a particular focus for us to bring women into the industry. We recognize that we have to start as early as the 4th grade with girls because they lose confidence, they don't take the level of math that they need, they decide they're not interested in science. So we've started working with organizations like First Robotics, First Tech, Skills USA, have summer camps focused just on girls to not teach them about energy, but to get them excited about technology and math and engineering and those fundamental skills that will impact all of our jobs. I think we have, in the education arena, we tend to talk about STEM as a pathway that will turn you into a mathematician or a chemist or whatever. These are foundational skills now. They're not just for particular job paths. Every single job we have is a STEM job in our industry. You can't pick one where if you don't understand technology, you can be successful in the job. So you have to back it all the way up and do the things that get them interested and start very early in terms of the pathways. Start moving into, these are the courses that I need to take so that I can be prepared for this array of jobs. But again, what it means is that companies have to be involved because the companies sponsor those extracurricular activities and are involved all the way through.
One of the things that we're seeing, working with a school system in Massachusetts, and they recognize that, and so they know that they're an underperforming school district. Half their students are matriculating to college, the other half aren't, they're staying in their community. And so what we're working with them to do is to take what are those entry-level positions that you could be able to move into as a high school graduate and be able to then take those skills, work along with local employers, and then let those students begin to see those associated with the jobs that are in the community and be able to understand that you need to take math in 7th or 8th grade because even with a low-level job, that's what you're going to have. But they're starting to take that information in real time from their local employers and integrate that back into their curriculum so that people can see that, because that's one of the challenges is to make it real. And I think one of the other challenges we have is to rethink kind of what the notion of education is too. So the burning glass data, which is great stuff, but they're scraping all of that data, and if you look at that data, it'll say 80% of cyber jobs require a 4-year degree. Because most job descriptions will say that because that's coming through kind of the HR side of the world. If you talk to most CEOs will say, I don't care. I need them to be able to do these 10, 12, 15 things, whatever that right number, to have this certificate. But we still have that, we don't know how else to kind of, how to filter people, and so we rely on something like a 4-year degree as opposed to stepping back and being able to break down those pieces.
We have to change the point of view of HR departments.
Right.
That's a big piece.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah, and I'll add to that in the surveying industry, we run into where we feel like we're kind of in between a 4-year degree versus someone right out of high school. There are specialized skill sets that we need that we're looking for people that are coming into the industry to have, but they're not always taught everywhere. What we've been talking to high schools and middle schools in Maryland, and what we found is that the geometry and trigonometry that are the basis of our skill sets as surveyors are only taught as chapters overall, as opposed to a full class for half a year or a whole year. Like when I was in high school, I took trigonometry for a whole year, so I know backwards and forwards, and so we had to educate the teachers as to what we were looking for in future surveyors, so that they could, within their curriculum, try to focus on that and help us out. And then, of course, we go into the schools and we talk to the students and we tell them what we do and how what they're learning now will impact the jobs that they're looking to get in 5 or more years when they graduate. We don't need necessarily a 4-year degree. In some states, you don't need a 4-year degree to become licensed as a surveyor. Certainly as the survey technicians, the field surveys, and the CAD techs aren't required to have a degree, but they definitely need more than a high school diploma. So there are specialized skills, and National Society of Professional Surveyors has a certified survey technician program where we train people on the different types of skills, and we go through different levels, all the way up to managers overseeing departments just before they become licensed surveyors.
So Brian, you're talking about this kind of level, right? And talked a little bit before about community colleges, right? And so we hear a lot about community colleges in terms of workforce development. So like, who's doing it well? What's the role of community colleges in terms of driving economic development in the future in local areas, right?
I'll give you an example. I talked about the foundational skills and then adding on, as part of our Minnesota Energy Workforce Consortium, the Minnesota Community College System looked a few years ago at the way they educated for lots of these kind of technician jobs. They completely restructured their curriculum. They have foundational curriculum that everybody goes through, and then you begin to major in different pieces. And so you can start with this foundation curriculum and go from a utility technician to biomedical. It scans because they did such a great job of pulling together and looking at what the specific skills are. But more importantly, what that does is not just about education, but it means that students take common things first, and then they take things later that will more closely match the job market. And here's an example. They had a nuclear uniform curriculum program for the nuclear plants that were closed. Well, as the plants closed in that area, students were able to shift over to do something in transmission distribution or something else because it more closely matched the job demand. If you're asking a student to pick an industry day one, the industry can change, the curriculum, the skills, all of that can change in the 4 years that it takes to get an associate degree, not 2, because they're also working. So you have to push out those specific things to closer match the job market.
And that was Minnesota or Minneapolis specifically, or where was that?
It's Minnesota for the system. St. Cloud Technical School is a great example of how you can really restructure education, but it took a lot to make that happen.
One of the things you're starting to see, you're seeing this locally, Prince George's Community College is doing it, Montgomery College is starting to do this too. Oftentimes, the most nimble part of your community college system is your workforce area, because they don't necessarily have to go through your state boards of higher education to get the curriculum approved. And so you can take that and begin to be more addressable to what the needs of your local workforce are. But typically, those don't grant credits that you can then use toward a degree or towards your next step. And so creating the notion of a stackable credential that allows you to say, okay, I took these 3 workforce courses, which allowed me to get my job, so I can actually work and even continue to go to school. But then, once I have better understanding of kind of how that fits within the broader curriculum in the more degree granting side of the house, now those credits can then transfer back and make those be, you can allow them to be transferable. And that's not something that's a very new concept within the community college system, where people are starting to do that so they can be nimble on the front end, see what the workforce demand looks like, what local employers are looking for, provide those initial jobs, figure out what they need to do, and then get the curriculum approved later, but allow students to be able to take those credits with them, and then ultimately build up towards a degree.
It's, and that piece of, often when you go to work for a community college, they'll say, let's put it on the workforce development side first, because it's faster, and then we'll switch it over. We rarely see it being switched over. And what ends up happening is students may take what amounts to a year or more of courses, but they don't get the credit and the credential to be able to say, okay, now I can take that and add to and move on to the next one. So from a student side, they kind of get shortchanged on some of it.
I just wanted to commend to you in the Chicagoland area, I believe Accenture and JP Morgan Chase are working with high schools and community colleges in that corridor on early college STEM schools, the P-TECH model to a great extent. So essentially in high school, you are identified as an interest in technology. You can start taking coursework and internships and apprenticeships, and that's key, the work-based learning piece of this. So that you can transfer your credits into a community college, you can go get your 2-year associate degree while working, and you can make a decision after your 2-year associate degree, do I want to go into the workforce, because I now have practical work experience, as well as the accreditation, or do I want to go on to a 4-year college program where I am now prepared to do so? So those are great examples, and they're happening in other areas as well.
I just want to actually add to that because you used the word apprenticeship, and Department of Labor invested, I think, nearly $60 million just last year alone in 90 youth apprenticeships. And I just want to actually ask this question because the apprenticeship has been kind of traditional in construction industry, manufacturing, etc. The technology industry is very new to that domain. We at MFTC will work with National Urban League. We are on a Department of Labor contract, and we are developing some of the new occupations within the wireless communication. But I have a question that, are there any apprenticeship programs you are aware of which involves cybersecurity, for example, or any occupations related to smart cities?
So there's a program actually in Baltimore called TransEd, that is doing cybersecurity apprenticeship. And so they're working with a number of organizations. They actually started in the UK and they've come over here. And they've started Baltimore as kind of one of the first steps. And they're trying to get it to a number of different communities. But for exactly that reason, to try and get that workforce, that experiential learning opportunity, because inevitably, even if you have the skills, almost every employer will say, but I need you to have some experience. And so the apprenticeship model actually works pretty well there. And so they're just starting to get traction. They're working with Maryland Department of Labor, licensing and labor regulation, and are putting those pieces in place. I think they've been doing it for about the last 2 years, but it's TransEd is one of them.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to end here with a question that's kind of a micro and macro question, right? So Representative Issa's constituent, right, is trying to figure out this maze. I mean, we sit in these rooms all the time and talk about this policy stuff. I don't know if I was dropped down into something, I would necessarily know what steps to take as an individual in terms of navigating this, right? So in terms of Congressman Issa's constituent, Congresswoman Clarke's constituent, what should they be doing to navigate? And then there's the macro question, which is what should Congress be doing on a bipartisan basis to address this issue and to move us forward?
So I will jump in with that. A lot of our companies are doing things in this space, trying to get people interested in software jobs, interested in tech jobs. A lot of those efforts are siloed necessarily because they are the company's specific plans. We have built a website that we're going to roll out later this summer, transformyourtrade.org, and it gathers up a lot of those materials because I think that is really the first step, is to get people interested, excited, and over the notion that they can't do it. Because I think that is the big stopping point, the big blocking point for a lot of people is this notion that this isn't for me. These technology jobs are for math wizards and the kids who were in classes that I wasn't in high school, and that is not the case. So that, I think, is the the kind of first individual step is to get people interested, engaged, and kind of believing in themselves. And the next is the BSA has put out a workforce agenda. There are copies of it here on the table, that macro piece. There are lots of things to do. We can support STEM. There was a question about STEM, and I don't want to create work for Charlene, but I think that's a whole other panel that we can really deep dive into that question. There are ways, for example, the National Manufacturing Partnership over at NIST that has kind of helped create some of these tech partnerships in the manufacturing space that you could expand and look for other opportunities like that. And with that, I'll hand it off.
Sure. I guess, so at the micro level, if I'm the constituent, I think your focus needs to be thinking more about what you can do than where you did it. So acquiring the skills and understanding that that's going to be your cachet in the marketplace. Being able to do tangible things and understand what those are. And so as you're looking, if you know the field you want to be in, begin to think about what those skills are that do that and begin to catalog that. And that's not easy, but if that's what you want to do, I mean, that's going to be your currency to be able to move forward, is understanding what skills you have, because that's what employers are ultimately looking for. From a macro perspective, I think Congress or other policymakers need to be careful. The notion was, first, we're going to fund college completion. And so we live in Maryland, that was our objective. We're going to have 55, 60% college completion. That's nice, but implicit in that is the notion that if you have college completion, then of course you can get a job. What we're seeing is, unless you actually have the skills, it still doesn't make a difference unless you have that degree in something that's relevant. Having a degree in and of itself isn't what it was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And so now we're seeing people in policymakers moving into, well, it's not college completion, now it's credential completion. You have the same issue. Unless it's aligned to what the employers are actually looking for, just to approve credentials doesn't necessarily solve the problem either. And so to start thinking about how you break this down into supporting people identifying skills, understanding what industries need, and not trying to look at kind of a thing, college completion, credential completion as the be all and end all. It's got to be aligned back to an industry to know that that's what the industry is actually looking for. Because otherwise, they're still just doing kind of a train and pray model. You can say, oh, well, everybody they graduated with the appropriate credentials. Well, they all got credentials, but how did they get employed after that? And I think that's a piece we always struggle with.
Yeah, I will ditto all of that. And when we talk about credential completion, I think it's really important to think about which credentials companies really recognize and which ones are preferred for hiring, because there's so many of them out there now that are totally relevant. I'll go back to working to find a common denominator. And we work nationally, regionally, state level, and locally. One of the things that we found out very quickly is that even if you're a really big company, really big utility, it's difficult to create programs with a technical community college, high school, university, where you can commit to hiring everybody every time. So you might be able to do it when you're in a hiring boom, but then as you begin to hire less because you're saturated, the programs will close, and it's very difficult to restart once you've done that. So what we have found works is where multiple employees can get together and say, start with that strategic workforce planning. Across this state, we are going to need about this many skilled technicians in this area. And then compete when you recruit and hire, but collaborate in the classroom. Then we can create this talent pipeline that will provide enough for everybody, and we can compete on our own merit. So taking this idea of figuring out what works at an industry level or a national level, and then make it regionally or locally implementable, so that everybody gets what they need in terms of employees, but you have this steady stream instead of what we have now, which is fits and starts and bits and pieces and funding going out for very niche kinds of jobs that have disappeared by the time people actually have gone through a program. So, it has been my mantra here today, but being able to find common denominator, foundational skills that match to multiple jobs, and then add to that so that you can be able to match an industry much more specifically.
And I would say on a micro level, working locally, and as you said, getting the companies in to get involved, but also getting the trade organizations involved. like we are with the Maryland Society of Surveyors, working with the Baltimore City Mayor's Office of Employment Development, and creating a program designed to bring people into our profession. So we're telling them this is what we need as an organization, and then our companies will compete. In our internship program last year, we competed for those interns who completed the program, and then we're expanding it this year. We have more interns coming in, and then everyone in the industry in Central Maryland is going to compete for those people that complete the program. So that's locally, and we're trying to expand it outside of the city, and we're meeting varied success because each locality is different. So what the NSBS is actually thinking is that while we want to deal locally with each locality and the demands in those localities, we have to have some kind of national oversight, and that's what we're hoping to develop through maybe legislation or working with Congress somehow to figure out how we can do something nationally as a guideline before we get into the localities to look for who needs it. Because while NSPS is working with each state society, some states have, a high demand, Texas and Florida, where construction is booming, but maybe other states don't have that high of a demand. So maybe we need to know where to focus our efforts better.
Thank you, Ryan, Ann, Mike, Chris, thank you all so much for joining us. I'm going to turn it back over to the members here, or the members' representatives, to close us out.
Well, on behalf of both of us, we just wanted to thank you so much for coming to this event. And our next one on the fourth pillar, sustainability, is going to be the end of this month, May 29th. More details will be forthcoming as far as time and location, so just stay tuned on that. We'll be sure to keep you all informed on the next event. All right, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for coming.
Great.